It was a quiet, overcast day in a small town that had seen better times. Rows of modest houses lined the streets, their once vibrant facades dulled by years of wear and economic struggle. The main street, a hub of activity in more prosperous decades, now looked worn and sparse, with shuttered storefronts standing as silent reminders of businesses that had folded under financial pressure. The community had been hit hard by a combination of economic challenges, job losses due to factory closures, rising costs of living, and an ongoing struggle to recover from the ripple effects of a recent recession. For many families, putting food on the table had become a daily challenge. Food banks were overwhelmed, operating at capacity, while charitable organizations struggled to meet growing demand. Parents skipped meals so their children could eat, and elderly residents on fixed incomes quietly endured hunger in the privacy of their homes. At the heart of this struggling community stood a small, independently owned grocery store, a cornerstone of the town for decades. Owned by Robert, a middle-aged man who had inherited the business from his parents, the store was more than just a place to buy food. It was a gathering spot, a lifeline, and a symbol of resilience. But even Robert was struggling. He had seen his sales plummet over the last few years as fewer customers could afford to shop at his store. The aisles, once bustling with activity, were now eerily quiet. His shelves were stocked with fresh produce, canned goods, and pantry staples, but much of it went unsold, forcing him to throw away inventory he couldn't afford to lose. "It's hard to watch," Robert said one morning to his cashier, Susan, as they surveyed the near-empty store. "People walk in, look at the prices, and leave with just a loaf of bread or a few cans of soup. It's not that they don't want more, they just can't afford it." Unbeknownst to Robert, a visitor had arrived in the town that same morning. Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur and CEO of companies like Tesla and SpaceX, was in the area for a business-related event. Musk had always been a figure of intrigue, admired by many for his vision and criticized by others for his bold, sometimes polarizing approach to problem-solving. Elon was being driven through the town when he noticed the grocery store. Something about the quiet, almost melancholic scene caught his attention. Perhaps it was the handful of people walking out with small bags, their faces lined with worry, or the stark contrast between the grocery store and the sleek, high-tech spaces Musk usually occupied. "Pull over," Musk said to his driver, his gaze fixed on the store. Within moments, he was inside, blending in with the small crowd. The atmosphere was subdued. Families walked through the aisles with careful deliberation, picking up and putting down items as they mentally calculated what they could afford. The cashier exchanged polite smiles with customers, but the weariness in her eyes spoke volumes. Musk wandered it through the store, observing quietly. He didn't need a business report to see what was happening here. The store was struggling, the people were struggling, and the weight of it all was palpable. Musk moved through the aisles of the grocery store, his casual attire allowing him to blend in. He picked up items at random, a loaf of bread, a bag of rice, but his focus wasn't on shopping. He was observing. The shelves, while stocked, didn't have the bustling energy he had seen in larger cities. The hum of conversation was replaced by a quiet tension as shoppers carefully selected items, their choices dictated not by preference but by necessity. A mother with two young children held a basket containing little more than milk, cereal, and a small bag of apples. An elderly man stood frozen in the canned goods section, debating between soup and beans. As Musk made his way toward the register, he noticed the store manager, Robert, standing near the counter. Robert's face bore the unmistakable signs of someone carrying the weight of too many worries. Musk approached him, introducing himself casually. "I couldn't help but notice your store," Musk said, gesturing toward the shelves. "It's a nice place. How's business?" Robert hesitated, unsure how to respond. He didn't recognize Musk immediately, but the question felt genuine. It's been tough," Robert admitted. "People around here are struggling. They want to support the store, but there's only so much they can do when they're just trying to get by." Musk nodded, his expression thoughtful. "What happens to the food that doesn't sell?" he asked. "We donate some of it to the food bank when we can, but a lot of it just goes to waste," Robert replied, his voice tinged with regret. "It's heartbreaking, really. There's so much need, but not enough resources to go around." Musk glanced around the store, his mind racing with ideas. He had come here on a whim, but now he saw an opportunity to make a difference. Without hesitating, he turned back to Robert with a question that caught him completely off guard. "What if I bought everything in the store?" Musk asked. Robert blinked, certain he had misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "Everything," Musk repeated, his tone calm but firm. "I want to buy out your entire inventory, every item in the store." Robert stared at him, stunned. That's, that's very generous, but why?" "Because this community needs it," Musk said simply. "And I want to make sure this food gets to the people who need it most." The store fell silent as Robert processed Musk's words. The cashier stopped mid-scan, and a nearby shopper froze with a box of pasta in hand. The idea was so outlandish, so unexpected, that it took a moment for everyone to fully grasp what Musk was suggesting. "You're serious?" Robert finally asked. "Completely," Musk replied. "And I'll pay whatever you think is fair. In fact, I'll pay more if it means we can get this done quickly." Robert hesitated, torn between disbelief and hope. "If you really want to do this, we'd need to close the store temporarily to figure out logistics, and I'd need time to gather my staff." "Let's do it," Musk interrupted, his tone decisive. "I'll cover the cost of your staff's time, too. And if you need volunteers, I'm sure people in the community will step up." Within minutes, plans were set in motion. The store was closed to regular shoppers, and the announcement was made. Every item in the store had been purchased and would be distributed to families in need for free. Staff members who had been preparing for another slow day suddenly found themselves packing groceries into bags, organizing items into categories, and coordinating with volunteers who had begun arriving after hearing the news. Musk worked alongside them, carrying crates of fresh produce and stacking loaves of bread on tables. He didn't speak much, focusing instead on the task at hand. The reaction from the community was immediate and overwhelming. Families began lining up outside the store, the words spreading like wildfire through phone calls, text messages, and social media. The grocery store, once a quiet and somber place, was transformed into a vibrant hub of activity. Tables were set up outside, and rows of bags filled with essentials, milk, rice, beans, fresh vegetables, bread, were distributed to families. Volunteers arrived in droves, many of them residents who wanted to help their neighbors. Store employees worked tirelessly, their initial shock replaced by a sense of purpose and camaraderie. Musk himself was at the center of it all, helping to direct traffic, stack items, and hand out bags with a quiet smile. Parents wept openly as they received groceries, many of them sharing stories of their struggles. One mother, holding her toddler on her hip, tearfully thanked Musk, saying, "I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids this week. You've given us more than food. You've given us hope." Elderly residents who had spent months rationing their limited groceries walked away with full bags and expressions of gratitude. Children clutched boxes of cereal and jars of peanut butter as if they were treasures. By the end of the day, every item in the store had been distributed. As the sun set, the exhausted but elated staff gathered for a moment of reflection. Musk thanked them personally, emphasizing the importance of their work and the impact it had on the community. 5. Families' emotional reactions. As the grocery bags were handed out, the atmosphere outside the store became a blend of relief, gratitude, and raw emotion. Parents who had spent months rationing meals embraced their children with tears in their eyes. Elderly residents, some of whom had gone days without a proper meal, walked away with bags filled to the brim, their faces etched with a mix of disbelief and joy. One young mother, holding a bag of groceries in each hand, paused to speak with Musk. Her voice trembled as she said, "You don't know what this means to us. My husband and I have been skipping meals so our kids could eat. Now we'll all be able to sit down and have a proper dinner together. Thank you." Musk listened attentively, his demeanor quiet and respectful. He offered a simple response, "I'm just glad I could help." Another man, a father of 3, approached Musk with his eldest son in tow. "You don't know us," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But today you've given my family more than food. You've given us dignity." The emotional weight of these encounters wasn't lost on the volunteers or the staff. Many of them found themselves choking back tears as they witnessed the impact of the gesture firsthand. The grocery store employees, who had spent months watching families struggle to afford even the basics, felt a renewed sense of purpose as they worked tirelessly to distribute the food. As the last few bags were handed out, Musk took a moment to step back and observe the scene. Families lingered, chatting with volunteers and one another, the heaviness that had gripped the community replaced by an air of hope and possibility. For Musk, it was a humbling reminder of the power of simple, tangible acts of kindness. What started as a quiet local event quickly gained national attention thanks to social media. Bystanders, volunteers, and recipients had captured the day on their phones. Videos of Musk helping carry bags of groceries, photos of families walking away with smiles and tears, and personal stories about how the gesture had touched their lives. A young woman who had been volunteering at the store posted a video on Twitter with the caption, "Today I saw something incredible. Elon Musk bought out an entire grocery store so families in need could have food. It wasn't about cameras or publicity. He just wanted to help. Humanity still exists." Elon helps grocery for good. The video quickly went viral, amassing millions of views within hours. Comments poured in from around the world, with people expressing admiration and gratitude for the gesture. Say what you want about billionaires, but this is what they should all be doing. It's one thing to donate money to a charity, but buying out a store and helping directly, that's next-level compassion. This inspired me to donate to my local food bank today. Small acts matter. As the hashtags Elon Helps and Grocery for Good began trending, news outlets picked up the story. Videos and photos from the event appeared on television, alongside interviews with volunteers, recipients, and the grocery store owner. One clip, showing an elderly woman tearfully hugging a bag of groceries as she thanked Musk, became a symbol of the day's impact. Her words, "You've saved me," were shared across platforms, resonating with viewers worldwide. The viral nature of the story sparked a media frenzy. Major news networks ran headlines like, "Elon Musk buys out grocery store in unprecedented act of kindness. From innovation to compassion. How Musk's gesture is feeding families in need." The public reaction was largely positive, with many praising Musk for stepping beyond his typical role as a tech visionary and using his resources to address an immediate, tangible need. Editorials highlighted the power of direct action and questioned how society could better utilize the resources of the wealthy to address systemic issues like food insecurity. However, as with any high-profile story, there were critics. Some questioned Musk's motivations, suggesting the gesture was a calculated move to improve his public image. Others argued that while the act was commendable, it did little to address the root causes of poverty. "This is a band-aid solution to a much deeper problem," wrote one commentator. "We need billionaires to focus on systemic change, not just one-time acts of charity," another opined. Still, the overwhelming response was one of gratitude and inspiration. Advocacy groups used the opportunity to push for policy changes, urging lawmakers to address food insecurity on a larger scale. Amid the media frenzy that followed the event, Elon Musk maintained a notably low profile. Unlike the elaborate press conferences or celebratory announcements that might accompany a high-profile act of philanthropy, Musk chose a more understated approach. When pressed for a statement by reporters and media outlets, he kept his response brief and straightforward. Taking to Twitter, a platform where he was famously active, he wrote, "I saw a need and I acted. It's as simple as that. We can all do something to help our communities. Grocery for good." The simplicity of Musk's message struck a chord with his followers and the wider public. In just a few sentences, he distilled his motivation into something universally relatable. The idea that anyone, regardless of their resources, could identify a need in their community and act to address it. His words were widely shared and praised, with many seeing them as a call to action. The hashtag Grocery for Good began trending across social media platforms, sparking conversations about how individuals and organizations could make a difference in their own neighborhoods. Musk's choice to emphasize the act itself rather than drawing attention to his personal involvement stood out in an era where philanthropy was often accompanied by significant fanfare. By keeping the focus on the people who had been helped and the broader issue of food insecurity, Musk sent a message about the importance of humility in giving. His approach suggested that the true value of philanthropy lay not in recognition, but in the tangible impact it had on people's lives. In the days following his tweet, Musk used his social media presence to further highlight the issue of food insecurity, sharing statistics and reports about its prevalence in the United States. He noted that over 34 million Americans, including more than 9 million children, faced food insecurity, a staggering figure that underscored the scale of the problem. Musk also retweeted stories of grassroots initiatives and local heroes who were working to combat hunger in their own communities, amplifying their efforts and encouraging others to follow their lead. In a subsequent interview, Musk elaborated on his motivations for the grocery store buyout. The conversation was informal, conducted during a break at one of his Tesla facilities. Sitting in a nondescript meeting room, Musk spoke candidly about the experience. This wasn't about making a grand statement, he said. It was about helping real people in a real way. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. I saw families who needed food, and I saw a store that had food. The answer seemed obvious. When asked how he felt about the widespread attention his gesture had received, Musk paused before responding. If my actions inspire others to step up and make a difference, then that's the best outcome I could hope for, he said. I didn't do this for the headlines or the tweets. I did it because it felt like the right thing to do in that moment. And honestly, I think there are a lot of people out there who would do the same if they had the means. Musk's interview quickly gained traction, not just because of the content of his words, but because of the tone in which they were delivered. There was no sense of self-congratulation or theatrics, only a pragmatic acknowledgement of the importance of helping others and a hope that his actions would inspire similar efforts. One of the more striking elements of Musk's response was his emphasis on collective responsibility. While he recognized that his wealth gave him unique opportunities to create change, he stressed that meaningful contributions didn't require billions of dollars. Not everyone can buy out a grocery store, Musk admitted with a slight smile, but that doesn't mean you can't make a difference. Volunteering at a food bank, donating a little extra when you can, or even just checking on your neighbors. These are all ways to help. It's about building a culture of care. Musk's humility resonated deeply with many. His words shifted the narrative of Gestion away from the spectacle of a billionaire's generosity and toward the universal idea of shared humanity. Social media was flooded with stories of people inspired by Musk's example, from small business owners donating surplus stock to individuals pledging to volunteer at local shelters. The ripple effect was undeniable. Musk's response also reignited conversations about the role of the ultra-wealthy in addressing societal challenges. Advocacy groups and policymakers pointed to the grocery store event as a case study in how those with significant resources could take direct action to improve lives. Op-eds and think pieces debated whether Musk's approach should serve as a model for philanthropy, focusing on immediate, tangible solutions rather than large-scale initiatives that often took years to yield results. Despite the praise, Musk remained modest. He refrained from making further public appearances related to the event, choosing instead to let the impact of his actions speak for itself. His restraint stood in stark contrast to the way public figures often sought recognition for their charitable efforts, further solidifying his reputation as someone more interested in outcomes than accolades. Even as the media moved on to other stories, Musk's words and actions continued to reverberate. His call for collective responsibility, his insistence that everyone could do something to help their communities, became a lasting part of the event's legacy. By using his platform to shine a light on food insecurity and encouraging others to act, Musk demonstrated that philanthropy wasn't just about giving, it was about inspiring a culture of care that could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond the scope of the initial gesture. The grocery store event had a profound and lasting impact on the community. The immediate relief provided by the groceries gave struggling families a reprieve, but the ripple effects extended far beyond the initial gesture. The grocery store, once on the brink of closure, experienced a resurgence in business. Customers who had been unable to afford regular shopping returned with a newfound sense of trust and loyalty, eager to support the store that had become a symbol of hope. Local nonprofits and community leaders, inspired by Musk's example, organized additional initiatives to support families in need. Food drives, donation campaigns, and volunteer programs sprang up, creating a network of support that had previously been lacking. One local resident summed it up best. What Elon did wasn't just about food, it was about showing us what's possible when people care. This community feels alive again. The story's viral reach inspired individuals and organizations around the world to take action. Other wealthy individuals followed Musk's lead, funding similar initiatives in their own communities. Corporations launched campaigns to support food banks, pledging millions of dollars to combat hunger. Social media became a hub for grassroots efforts, with people sharing their own acts of kindness under hashtags like Pay It Forward and Inspired by Elon. Small business owners donated excess inventory to local shelters, and everyday citizens volunteered their time and resources to help those in need. Advocacy groups seized the momentum to push for systemic changes, from expanding access to food assistance programs to increasing funding for affordable housing and job training. The story had evolved from a single act of kindness into a global movement for compassion and change. Years after the event, the story of Elon Musk buying out the grocery store endured as a powerful testament to how individual actions could inspire collective change. It became a defining example of what direct and localized philanthropy could achieve. The simplicity of the act, addressing an immediate need in a struggling community, was what made it so memorable. Unlike grandiose charity campaigns that often took months or years to implement, Musk's decision was spontaneous, compassionate, and effective, demonstrating that significant change could begin with a single bold step. For Elon Musk, this gesture became a pivotal moment in his public image. While he was known globally for his groundbreaking achievements in technology and space exploration, this act revealed a deeply human side of a man often viewed as a distant innovator. It highlighted that even amidst the pursuit of monumental goals like colonizing Mars and creating a sustainable energy future, Musk understood the value of addressing real, tangible needs here on Earth. His generosity reminded the world that even the most visionary leaders could and should find time to act on a local level. The community Musk helped was forever transformed. Families who had struggled to make ends meet began to find stability, thanks in part to the network of resources that emerged after Musk's intervention. The grocery store, once a struggling small business, became a thriving hub of activity. Increased patronage from locals who wanted to support a store so closely tied to their community's resurgence allowed the owner to reinvest in the business. With time, the store expanded its offerings, introduced discount programs for low-income families, and partnered with local farmers to provide fresh, affordable produce. The psychological impact on the community was equally profound. Musk's gesture wasn't just about providing groceries. It was about restoring hope and dignity. The event reminded the residents of the power of collective care, inspiring a wave of local activism. Neighbors who had once felt isolated by their struggles began working together, organizing food drives, volunteer programs, and resource-sharing initiatives. Musk's act served as a spark that reignited a sense of solidarity among people who had almost forgotten what it meant to rely on and support one another. The event's ripple effects spread far beyond the town. As the story of Musk's generosity went viral, it became a symbol of what was possible when resources and compassion intersected. Business leaders, inspired by Musk's example, began implementing similar programs in other communities. Entire grocery chains adopted Pay It Forward days, during which portions of sales were donated to food banks or low-income families. Local governments, motivated by the story's global attention, prioritized initiatives addressing food insecurity, recognizing the power of combining grassroots action with corporate support. Elon Musk's gesture also became a case study for philanthropists, academics, and social scientists who sought to understand its far-reaching impact. It demonstrated that solving complex societal issues didn't always require sprawling bureaucratic efforts. Sometimes it took just one person noticing a need and acting decisively to create a cascade of positive outcomes. Musk's story began to feature in conferences, books, and think pieces as an example of how leaders could wield their influence and resources for immediate good, showing that large-scale change often began with small, intentional acts. Years later, Musk's decision was still referenced as a blueprint for modern philanthropy. Documentaries revisited the event, tracing its long-term impact on the town and the broader movement it inspired. The grocery store itself became a symbol of resilience, with a small plaque near its entrance commemorating the day Musk stepped inside and changed everything. Families who had received groceries during that pivotal moment passed the story down to their children, ensuring that the memory of the kindness they had experienced would endure. The legacy of the gesture extended beyond its immediate beneficiaries, touching countless lives through the awareness it raised and the actions it inspired. Musk's example reminded people that no matter how big the challenges seemed, even a single act of kindness could make a difference. It reinforced the idea that solutions didn't always have to be complex. Sometimes, they simply required the willingness to see a problem and act. Ultimately, the story of Elon Musk buying out the grocery store was remembered as more than just an act of generosity. It became a symbol of how kindness, when amplified, could transcend borders, inspire action, and create ripples of change that transformed lives for years to come.